So thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you for watching this video later online. Today we're talking about fundraising for impact. Um, my name is Jordan Hamilton. I'm the Director of Development with Defeat Duchenne Canada. And in my role, I'm really fortunate. I get to meet some incredibly inspiring people. Um, Two people I've had the pleasure of meeting are John and Mike, who are with us today. And we've had some great conversations about their walk to defeat Duchenne, um, how they're fundraising, and I wanted to share that information with you. So Mike and John very generously offered to volunteer to be part of this webinar and share a little bit about their own experiences and some tricks and tips about how they've been so successful as fundraisers. So before beginning, let me do a proper introduction. So John Davidson, in 1995, John pushed Jesse in his wheelchair more than 3,300 kilometers across Ontario and raised more than $1 million for genetic research. In 1998, John set out alone on Jesse's journey in order to generate additional money. John walked 8,300 kilometers across Canada and raised an extra $2 million. He was appointed the first executive director of the Foundation for Gene and Cell Therapy, now called Defeat Duchenne Canada. And Mike McCullough played with the CFL Rough Riders for 11 seasons. He's a two-time Grey Cup winner and two-time recipient of the Mosaic Community Award presented to the Rough Rider who contributes the most to community. So we're here today with John, we're here today with Mike, two Canadian legends who've done so much for the Duchenne community. Both John and Mike have boys with Duchenne, and when faced with that challenge, took it on and decided to not just help their own families, but to help all families with Duchenne. So thank you, John. Thank you, Mike, for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Thanks.
So the first question I have for you is, John, you've walked across Ontario, pushing a wheelchair, and your son, you've walked across Canada, and Mike, you've competed in two Grey Cups as the winning team. Is it possible to raise funds, even if you aren't able to organize a large-scale walk to defeat Duchenne with 100 people or a high-profile event?
Well, I'll go first if that's all right.
Always all right, sir.
Jordan, I think the reality is that none of us start out as fundraisers, and your quick paragraph here has given viewers a capsule of what's gone on. So I'll leave it to them. If they want to find out more about what happened during the adventures on the road, they can find that very easily at johndavidson.ca. That's where you can find out what we did and why we did it. But I think today we want to talk about fundraising in terms of how do we do it? Because it's not easy. None of us have ever, I don't think, set out to be fundraisers at the beginning, and it's slightly terrifying. We're not good at asking people for money. Sometimes people can look at something like fundraising for research and see that they understand fundraising, but they don't understand research. Their perception oftentimes is that it's kind of a black hole that they throw money into. They don't know where it went, but they just kind of feel good because a friend of mine asked me, so I threw $100 in there and I don't know where it went. I don't know what it did. We want to eliminate that and show people exactly where their money went and what it did. And when you can do that, then people become much more receptive to the idea of being asked. And as I said, it's a wee bit foreign to us. We're not really comfortable with it, but it's something we have to do. And we all have a network. It starts with our own families. There are aunts, uncles, sisters, brothers, cousins. And all of those people are interested in helping out. And I think we can talk about a lot of ways that people want to help. And what do we actually give people? Well, we don't give them anything tangible, but I quote Mike McCullough when I say that after I met Mike and Laura in Kingston, you can't imagine the feeling I had inside me when Mike said to me, you know what you gave us, John? You gave us hope. So I'll let Mike talk a little bit about how he and I came to meet each other and where we went from there.
Thanks, John. Yeah, so back in '05, our firstborn son, Cole, was born, and obviously healthy and happy at the time. But we soon found out within about 7 months that he was having seizures, which led to the diagnosis of Duchenne muscular dystrophy, which were two separate medical conditions. And we were lost. We were young parents. I was 25, my wife was 26, just trying to figure things out. The internet was around, but it was still only 2006, so it wasn't like it is today. So we're trying to find first of all, what Duchenne was, how does it affect us? And, we met with the doctors at Children's Hospital, and it was grim news, obviously. So we were scared out of our minds, and my wife was the internet sleuth, and she's the techie of the two of us. So she stumbled on to Jesse's journey, and we reached out to John, and we were in Kingston, Ontario, which is about 4.5 hours away from you at the time, because it was my off season. Reached out to John. I think within a week, John had shown up at our door in the winter, if I'm not mistaken. I want to say it was February or March or something like that, I think, John. So this man who we've never even met drove basically 9 hours round trip to meet two parents who were just blubbering messes. And yeah, the biggest thing he gave us was hope. He just kind of talked, and just seeing somebody else and hearing someone else's story who's going through the same thing, that filled us with immense hope and gratitude. Obviously, like to this day, John's like, we have a shrine, I think, to John in our house. We're so thankful. So, and him and his family. When we say John, I know it's his wife and his kids and his family. So same with myself. We reference me, but it's my wife and I together for sure. So we're so thankful to the Davidson family. And if you have hope, you got a chance. And that's what we always said. And that's kind of, we started our fundraising journey from there. We just said, hey, we're going to do everything we can for our son and all the little boys who who have Duchenne. And, unfortunately, my son and John's son passed away in the same year, 2009, if I'm not mistaken, right, John?
Yep.
Yeah. So, we both went through some hardships kind of at the same time. And, unfortunately, our boys couldn't be saved, but, we're kind of still raising money so maybe the next boy can be saved.
I think that's right, Mike, and it becomes a much bigger story than we ever imagined. And I think I've often written when I've given people a book that in the fly notes at the front, there's a picture of Jesse. And if I'm correct, I know that my quote says that in hindsight and looking back, my quote was that Jesse taught me more than I ever taught him. And you don't know that that's happening when you're young parents, because the worst comes first. And as you said, your world flips upside down when you get that shocking news that somehow Duchenne muscular dystrophy has entered your life and is in your family. And we don't know what to do. And I can tell you exactly what happens first. You cry. And grown men don't like to admit that, but that's exactly what you do. And it's a very healthy thing to do. And it is the right thing to do. And then you go into a period of silence, because this is just so hard to comprehend. And you don't know how to tell your best friend what has happened. Your best friend doesn't know how to ask what's happened, but everybody knows something's not right here. And that's a real hurdle for families, and like the families we're talking to today, and the people who are online with us who will carry this message forward to families they know. Maybe we can pass on some tips here. And I wanted to explain that in hindsight, when you look back, you really need to find a cause that's bigger than yourself. And that's exactly what we have tried to do. And I think that if you want to find yourself, the best way to do it is lose yourself in service to others. And that's exactly what I've tried to do, to build what was originally Jesse's journey and is well known in southwestern Ontario and pockets across Canada, I'm sure. I hear from people from coast to coast all the time about what our organization has meant to them in terms of inspiring them to want to do things. And people do want to go out and help. So I think in our conversation, we're going to talk about some of the things that you can actually do. So because it's money and nobody wants to talk about it, I'll jump in first and give you first thought here. I knew darn well that people are not comfortable talking about giving and donating. And so what I did is I made a video, and I'll make that available to everyone who wants to reach out, and I'll see that you get it. and it will help those who live in particularly smaller towns where they may well be the only family with Duchenne muscular dystrophy in that community. And I'm going to pick a place at random here. A place like Brooks, Alberta, small town, and I think the main manufacturing has to do with the meat packing plant. I know a number of people who work there, and I know a family who, when they were diagnosed there, could not tell anybody because no one in town had ever heard of Duchenne muscular dystrophy. They didn't know what it did or what its outcome would be. You'd be surprised how many people, when I've talked to them over the years, and you explain to them that it is a weakening of muscle and that eventually the respiratory system is going to be compromised and that you will lose your child. That's shocking news. Shocking news for people. And when I tell them that, they say, what? How come I never heard about this? Because it's a cycle. We lose about 2 a day, 2 more are diagnosed every day. That's a rough estimate for Canada, I think, but I think it's pretty close to accurate. So what we did in creating this video is tell the story that a person would want to tell their best friend, and then they don't have to be the one in tears in front of their friends and family. They can say, here's this contact. Just call this up. I'll tell the story for you. I'll show you our story. I'll explain what Duchenne muscular dystrophy is in lay terms so people will understand it. And I hope that we'll ignite a fire in them that they want to say, okay, I know what's happened to my buddy and his wife, and I want them to know we're here for you. We're here for you, and we're going to help you, and we're going to find ways to do things. Then we come down to the hard reality of how do you ask for money? Because most people are not used to doing that. But when you're driven and put in a position where you have to do that, then you get moving and start doing that right away. So how do you do it? First of all, don't put the whole burden on yourself that, oh, I'm going to have to do something fantastic and huge, and we have to raise millions. No, you are just one shining point of light. Pick a number that you can be comfortable with, that you think is achievable, that you can look in the mirror and say, hey, we tried our best. And then just go ahead and start making those asks of people. And don't worry about it. You know your friends and family. You know what's maybe possible with them. Ask them, would I be out of line in asking you to donate $100? And when you ask them that way, you give them an out if it's not going to be a fit. And they'll tell you, $100, I can contribute $500. Just tell me where I send it. Then you know that that's going to work. People will sometimes say no. Thank them very much. Because about 1 in 6 is going to say, yeah, I can make a contribution. Would $100 or $50 or whatever it might be okay? You tell them it absolutely would. That's $50 we didn't have yesterday. And that's $50 closer to the goal of finding a treatment and eventually a cure. So always thank them. Always use their name, by the way, when you're speaking to them. Just say, hey, Mike, I can't thank you enough, or Jordan or Lisa, I can't thank you enough for that. This is really going to help us get going. And then it just becomes like seeds you put in your garden. Look for ways to water that money and look for ways to fertilize it, look for ways to make it grow. The number one thing I find that people completely miss is echo programs that exist at corporations, major companies, even small family companies, who will match what their employees do in terms of making a donation. Hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars sit there unused because people were not aware that they could say to the boss, hey, my friends got together and they had a barbecue on the weekend and we've set a goal of $10,000. And you know what? They raised $1,000. We're 10% of the way there. And I'm wondering, do you think the company could match that? And they just might say, of course we will. I'd be surprised if they say, no, we're not going to do that. That's not how you build a team. So there are lots of ways to begin small and work your way up. And when you reach that $10,000, celebrate a little bit. Just look in the mirror and say, hey, we reached our goal. And you know what? Mike and Laura did that at the beginning. I don't think Mike and Laura knew in year 1 how much they would raise. They may have had an idea. I've never asked, but they picked that number after year 1 and said, okay, here's our benchmark. Can we go further next year? And it's gone into the hundreds of thousands that Mike and Laura and all their friends and all the guys on the team and all the people that Mike knows in Regina. And Mike's being very modest, but he's the guy who is highly recognized for his community involvement in Regina. And so he knows what I'm talking about here. And don't pick things that are going to kill you. Things like golf tournaments and so on sounds like a great idea. Everybody has fun. There's a silent auction, but you know what? People are oftentimes more focused on what that part of it's about than what the actual giving part is about. They don't get it that it's a fundraiser. They go there for a great round of golf. Of course, they might not get to play, and they go there because it'll be fun. They'll have some drinks, they'll have a nice meal, and they go shopping because they can get stuff at the silent auction cheap. So they got those three things on their mind. They've long since forgotten, why were we doing this again? Let's keep that foremost in their mind, that they're going to feel good because they know that they are giving to something that's going to make a difference. So, Mike, maybe you can tell me some of your experiences from people you've met and family you've asked. I don't know, maybe I'm way out of line here, but I think we're pretty close.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, we just kind of started off with the golf tournament, like you said. It's kind of the first thing that comes to people's mind, right? So it's a lot of work, but if if you can stick with it for a year or two, it kind of starts doing itself. Where if you get a couple of years in and it becomes regulars, you get your regulars there, you're going to make some decent money. The first year or two, you're not going to make 10, 12 grand. You might make $1,000, which, hey, it's great. Just got to make sure you're ready for the work that is involved with it. So we had about, I think, 5 or 6 years of it, but I was lucky enough that I was able to use my, as well, I was still playing. So in Saskatchewan, we had, golf with a rider. So people were paying exorbitant amounts of money to golf with the starting quarterback, things like that. So I was very lucky in that sense. Whereas, maybe the average person doesn't have that, but if that's your bag, then great, do it. We did a breakfast once or twice, just like a breakfast brunch before the Rider game. We hosted at a restaurant, so we made some money there. You can even you can do it all year round, right? It's not like you have to wait every year for the walk. You can do like a Super Bowl grid pool. Everybody has probably played one of those where, you do the 100 grids, $5 a grid. You make $500-600 with friends and family, and there you go. It's just, you can do little things like that throughout the year on sporting events or anything. So anything that you feel comfortable doing, start out like that, and then you kind of get the word out there, the charity's name out there, and then you maybe feel a bit more comfortable asking people outside your warm market for money, right? So you obviously start with your family and friends, like John said, and then you just kind of go from there. But the biggest thing I think is you got to tell the story too, right? Like we would always reference John. There's no matter where you look, there's a 5K walk, a 2K walk for Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, whatever that may be, right? And they're all good. But when you start throwing out there that you're going to walk 33 kilometers, people kind of perk up, like, what? You're gonna walk 33K? And you're like, why? And then you can tell the story as to why it's 33 kilometers. And I'm still blown away that John could walk that. I'm in good shape. I consider myself physically fit. After the 33K walk, I can't really move for about 12 to 16 hours. So to do that day in, day out for 10 months, and people, John wasn't 22 when he did it. So that blows people's minds. And when you start kind of getting into the backstory of why it's 33 kilometers and what we're walking for, people remember that, and anybody can do a 2K walk. And I always implore people, or Laura and I always would like to implore people who are doing the walk and fundraising for their kids to do the 33-kilometer walk. I know not everybody physically can, but if you're able to, I would do it at least once, just so you get an idea of how difficult it truly is. Because it is mind-numbing, it's body-numbing, it's unbelievable when you think, oh, I can walk forever. No, it's exhausting. And for this man to do this for 10 months straight, I don't know if I have the mental fortitude to do it. I'd like to think I would, but I don't know if the average person does. So we always tell people, do the 33-kilometer walk. That's a good way to start raising money, because it piques people's interest. Like, wow, you're going to walk 33K. Why? And then they maybe start giving more money and want to learn more as to why, why it was 33K. And you maybe get them as a regular every year. It could be your neighbor, it could be a friend of a friend. And every year they're like, yeah, that walk's in May, right? Yeah, I'm going to send you my $100. So, and Laura, my wife, used the internet a lot, right? I'm not a social media guy. I still have a flip phone. So, she would do the social media thing and put it out there. I'd do the email, and people, it's human nature, like to be praised. So we use everything, right? So she puts it out there. When one person donates, she puts it out there. Hey, I want to thank John Davidson for the $100 donation. It was unbelievable. Thank you so much. Every dollar counts. John, you're the best. Next day, Phil donates. Phil, thank you so much. So, people love praise, and it gets in the back of their mind, and everybody likes that. And then people who aren't donating maybe feel shame, and they start donating, right? I'm serious. Use every emotion.
Yeah.
Hey, this is your kid. John is far more diplomatic than me. I will shame you. I will praise you, whatever it takes to get money for my kid. I do not care. So I know most people aren't like that, but I didn't care. Like, I need money. This is my kid. Your kid's healthy, mine's not. I need money. I need to save my kids. So it's the same as, if your kid needed a $100,000 heart transplant, you wouldn't balk at trying to raise that money to get your kid that heart transplant to save his life. You would be on it. You would do it. So do it.
Yeah, I think you grow and mature when you realize that making an ask is something I never knew I could do that. But then you discover you can. And in sports vernacular, Mike, I know it's not football, but it's like Wayne Gretzky's line about you miss every shot that you don't take. If you don't ask people, you're not going to get. And don't be feeling, oh, I'm a failure because you got shot down. So I said, no, I'm sorry, I can't. That's fine. They've just moved you a few steps closer to the next person who's going to say yes. And when you do that, when you're successful there, absolutely do all you can to thank that person. Retain that list of names that you can go back to, particularly if you're able to say, hey, Bob, I know you gave us $50 last year, and I hope we honored you by doing that walk, and that you felt you were part of it with us. It was a lot of work, but thanks a lot for supporting us. And if you'd like to bump that up again this year, we'd be happy to have you a second year. There's a lot of times when you build relationships, that's what it's all about. And you can't do that. Thank you, yes, can go great on the internet. A lot of times trying to build relationships with people on the internet does not work. You have to be in front of people and see them, where you can shake their hand, and that's where the magic happens, and you can look them in the eye, and you have the synergy right there in front of you. There's a magic and a charisma that happens when people get together and start to bond, and then other people want to join in, because people like to be a part of something that's successful. And the more successful it is, the more they want to join. So, as you say, it's just a case of have no shame, as you were saying. Get out there and
I've got none.
And you know what? It's not. I mean, pick the low-hanging fruit, is what they say, or mine where the diamonds are, or fish where the fish are. They're in your family. They're the people who are. They're blood relatives to you. They're connected to you. They want to help. A lot of them don't know what to do, but they want to help. And if you can give them the creative path to challenge one another, for that matter. And let's be honest, when young people do not have an awful lot of money to give, when you get to be my age, you're probably in an area where you've acquired everything you're ever going to want in life. And you keep in mind that everything you own is going to be owned by somebody else someday. So those realities settle in. And then you say, you know what? We have this income. Let's make sure it's being used for something worthwhile. And I can't think of a more worthwhile cause than a guy like Mike and his wife Laura and their family, who are in our family. So why wouldn't they want to help? And as you say, you can always shame them afterwards if they don't. So
100%, yeah.
It's quite easy to do that when you're talking family, but that is where your best opportunity of doing fundraising. And keep in mind the first three letters of fundraising. Make it fun. Make them feel that they've really done something. And when you go to thank them, it's not a case of just saying, hey, thanks very much, appreciate your donation. If there's a small way you can show them what their money did, then you remove the black hole syndrome that, oh, I just threw it into research. I don't know what they do. You can find pieces you can give them or mail to them that will explain what their dollars meant. I'll tell you something interesting about the mail. In the old days, like 3-4 years ago, everybody got those number 10 envelopes, you all have seen them from Union Gas or whatever it is where you live, or the TV cable people, or your hydro people. They all send the bills. Now, of course, they come online, a lot of them. But you still get a stack of these for some reason. But every now and then you'll get that rectangular one that's, a big one. And you're thinking, birthday card, wedding invitation, not sure. But that's no longer considered correspondence. That's now considered a gift because it says on there, Ms. Laura McCullough, an address, blah, blah, blah. And something inside is handwritten that says, just wanted you to know how much we appreciated that. And you're the people who, although you didn't physically take the steps, you moved us several steps closer to where we want to go. And we're reaching the hurdles that we have to clear in order to get to that final hurdle, which is a long way down the road. We know that. But I think building that relationship is something you can't do unless you're in person, because that's where the synergy happens. That's where people feed off each other. And all of a sudden, the miracles start to happen. And people are saying, you won't believe who I just heard from. I was thinking about him or her, and I called them. And yeah, we're gonna meet in Toronto next week. We're both in, whatever it could be. The circumstance, you never know how that's going to come about. But find ways to say thank you, and not just at the time of the event. Find ways to say thank you every time you see that person, and use their name. And just say, Mike, Laura, Lisa, Jordan, thanks a lot for what you did for us, because this is going to make a big difference. And people don't think that their small gift makes a big difference. It really does.
John and Mike, I'm hearing both of you just express a lot of gratitude for all the generosity your family and friends have shown. Is there a particular donation or act of generosity that stands out to you as especially memorable, and why?
Well, I know I can, because when we were on the road, there were hundreds and, well, there were thousands of people who made donations. And the one that stuck out in my mind was, I think we were in Northern Ontario, and there was a young boy on the side of the road who was probably, I'm going to guess, 8 or 9 years old. And he had one of those gigantic jars of, I don't even know what went in them in those days. They're about a foot tall and this big around. And he's standing there holding this thing full of coins. And he gave it to us. And I'm sure his parents, because I think these are the kind of parents who had an education program for this youngster, and those sorts of things have been put in place by very organized and very good parents. But to that little boy, that was all the money he had in his life. And he gave it to us, all of it. And we put him on our poster the following year because we had his picture. And I've read stories of people who were visiting friends and they told the story. And the kids who were there who had never heard of us had opted out of toys for Christmas. They just wanted that money spent on research because it would make a difference for another little boy in another part of Canada. That's who's out there if you just scratch the surface and ask. I know Mike's friends on the football team, I've met a fair number of them. They are kind-hearted people like you would not believe. And you just have to make a little bit of a contact, ask them, and you will be surprised. And that's why I say, pick something bigger than yourself. And if you want to find yourself, lose yourself in being of service to others. And everybody likes it when you show them a pathway that's going to make them feel better about themselves. So it's not rocket science in terms of fundraising, especially when it's done at grassroots level. And there is a huge difference. Lots of times corporate checks, we're always happy to have one. We don't have a big corporate sponsor, but it's nice when those people have done that. And I've seen it happen many times, and I've been part of it on the recipient end and very happy about that. But in a way, it's still a big corporate check, and it's the grip and grin, shake hands and smile for the camera sort of thing. And I appreciate what they've done, but it's missing a bit of the magic of the actual people who made that happen, the employees of that place. And what did they do? And you can show them so many things you can do. You can have, peanut butter cookie day. You can have a lunch in the office. And it's all based on what I would call the F.W. Woolworth theory. If you're old enough to remember Woolworths, as I am, then you'll know what I'm talking about here. But the quote was, make it easy for them to buy. In other words, don't have them, well, I don't know if I should give you that. What? Oh, of course I'm in. Yes. And, universities do this all the time. They will call people and say, I was just speaking to so-and-so because they go down that alumni list and they check all these people and they call and we were just speaking to so-and-so who was in your graduating year in 77 and he's just made a donation and they'll tell you that it was a generous donation. And he mentioned that he thought you might be willing to do a similar. They do that. They market that and roll that machine all the time. We're not like that. We're not trying to badger people into doing something big. We appreciate it when people do not something big, but what they can. And there's a huge difference. And you're still going to get that feeling inside that when you put your head on the pillow at night, you're going to heave a sigh of relief and say, you know what? Despite all the woes of the world, and we have no shortage of those right now, I did something good today. And it's just going to make you feel great. So
I love how you described the little boy as magical. Mike, when have you experienced that magic?
I guess, I mean, we had a lot of donations over the years, but I guess it would have been probably a few years after Cole. I think it was maybe right after Cole passed, actually. So it would have been the 2010 season. The rival head coach / GM, Wally Buono, who's, arguably the greatest coach, one of the greatest coaches in CFL history. He made a donation to Jesse's Journey on behalf of Cole after he passed, which, I mean, I'd played against Wally for years, had never spoken directly to him, didn't even know he really knew me. And for him to do that, I thought was a pretty big deal. And I remember before the next game we played against, which probably, God, it would have been months after the donation. I just went up to him and thanked him personally, just like John said, and told him how much we appreciate him, taking the time. We've been battling against this team for 5, 6, 7 years, and for him to do that and not even send me an email to say, hey, I'd make a donation. He just made the donation. So I thought that was pretty cool of him to do that, and that's something I'll never forget.
It's amazing how donations can come from unexpected people and unexpected places.
100%. Especially someone who you're supposed to hate on the field.
I heard you say battle.
Yeah, battle. Sorry, yeah, that's the word.
Well, when you talk about those kinds of things, they do happen all the time. And I remember being in Saskatchewan and going across Canada. One day there was a couple of guys pulled over in a car and they stopped about 100 yards up in front of me and so on. By the time I got up to them, they were out of the car to make a donation. And, they had the mattress strapped to the roof, the whole bit. A couple of guys coming from Newfoundland, and they were heading to the oil patch in Alberta to find jobs. And these two guys, I could tell, they looked like they didn't have $5 to share between the two of them. And they reached in their pocket and gave us a pretty nice donation. And it was probably something that they needed almost more than we needed it. But they did it. That's particularly who those people are. People in Newfoundland, kind hearts. And they're not ashamed to do that visibly and let you know what they've done. And that's not to diminish the people in the other provinces and territories. They too have immense hearts and kindness. But the folks from Newfoundland, they were kind of special in that regard. But yeah, that day that they stopped was a pretty special day. And in a story sense, I can tell you I had a day when we were nearing Kingston when I was pushing Jesse across Ontario. And by this time we were getting closer to Ottawa, and there were a lot of people. Cars were lined up, and a lot of honking and air horns from transport trucks and stuff. And this lady and her sister's name was Sue. She told me this story 3 years after it happened. She said they were coming to Toronto in a big black car. Jesse and I are going toward Ottawa. I'm pushing them on the side of the road. And she said, that's John and Jesse. That's Jesse's Journey. We're going to make a donation. She turned the car around, got in line with all the other people. And she said to her sister, push the button, make the window go down. And her sister looked at her and said, Susie, the window hasn't gone down in 5 years. It's not going down today. She said, no, no, no. You push the ones over on your side and I'll work the master one over here and it'll go down. And nothing's happening. They're pushing buttons and master switches and everything, and they're getting closer to us and closer to us and closer to us, pushing these buttons. Nothing happens. And they get right up beside us, and all of a sudden, window is down. They made a donation, and then they drove right to the service station where this lady's husband worked. He was a mechanic. And she got out of the car and she said, hey, honey, the window went down. And he says, Susie, the window can't go down. He says, I'll fix it on the weekend, I promise. This is a famous guideline. I'll fix it on the weekend, I promise. And so Gary took the screwdriver, undid the panel, took the panel off, and showed the girls that the wires didn't meet. Now, in the world we live in, there are many, many ways to look at this story. There are many people who would see it one way or see it another way, and oh, I can explain that. I can't. I just know when I put my head on the pillow that this woman did not lie to me, and that is exactly what happened. And I, in this day and age, just chalked it up to perhaps it was part of the magic of Jesse's journey, because everybody wants their child's life to be magical and to grow up with no hurt, no pain, fun, friends, good marks, good life, marriage. It goes on and on and on. But some of us learned early on that it's not going to be a marriage, not going to be a wedding in June, not going to drive a car. And I look in back and I say, when I look at Jesse, there's someone who couldn't walk, couldn't run. He didn't skate, he never used a skateboard, he couldn't swim. He never rode a bicycle. But I look at the difference he made in people's lives, dealing with the struggle that he had. And that's exactly what all these boys with Duchenne do. They all make a mark in life at their own pace and their own time and in a very special way. And if there's some way to communicate to somebody you're asking to take part in a fundraising project, just how meaningful that is, not just to the cause, but to your child, then they're going to want to be in line to say, count on me this year and count on me next year. And let me know what else I can do to help. And those are the people that you want to stay in touch with that written communication, that video piece that I'm talking about for people at the very front who don't know how to tell their friends what's happened. We have the tool for you. Just let us know where you are. You can share it with all your friends and they'll take a look at it. I'll tell you right now, it's 16 minutes. Ask them if they could spare 16 minutes of their life for you. I'm sure they're going to say yes. What's up? And you say, I'll send it to you. Once they've seen it, they are going to be right back and say, what can we do to help? How can we help? So it makes fundraising a little easier. And especially they'll want to help again if you can demonstrate to them where their money went. It did not go into a black hole. It went into research, and don't overwhelm them with it does this and this and this, because research conversation is the worst than trying to do the New York Times crossword. It's just crazy. Most people don't understand it. And we do our best to try and get researchers to talk in layman terms. Talk to people so they'll understand what it is you do. Because I've seen many, many audiences, their eyes glaze over, it's going right over their heads. They have no idea what the researcher's talking about. But if the researchers would just stop and think for a minute, that language and dialogue works great when they're talking to other researchers. But I've seen rooms where there will be 200 people sitting there, 20 of them in the first row are researchers, and there's a panel of researchers on stage, and the people in the front row, they are just wetting their pants with excitement about what the researcher is telling them. All the rest of the audience is going right over their heads. And I ask researchers, ask yourself this, between the researchers and the rest of the audience, which group gives you money? Oh, yeah, it's the other group, isn't it? Oh, maybe I should try and speak to them a little more clearly. Absolutely. And, we're not rocket scientists. We're not doctors. We're parents. We're average people. We're trying to do a very big job and do our best at it. And it's not easy, but there are lots of ways. So think You remember when Volkswagen, way back, well, of course you won't, but way back in the 60s, Volkswagen used to buy this full page ad. It had nothing on it but a little yellow Volkswagen down in the corner that just said, think small. This was when GM and Ford and everybody and Chrysler were building these monster cars with fins on them and all sorts of stuff. And they capitalized because they said, why don't you think smaller? It'll cost less, pound for pound, because they put one on a scale and showed you that pound for pound, your Volkswagen's a better deal. But do things like that that help get people to understand the message that you don't have to take on a monster project and then feel dejected because, well, we didn't reach our target. We tried, but we didn't get there. Just instill in yourself an undefeatable, and I mean undefeatable optimism that you're going to get there. And you're going to do it in small bites by asking this person if they could help out this much, and that person, could you do this? And your company, can they match that? Is there someone in town that maybe a friend of yours has a contact with who's very high in the philanthropic world who could say, oh, sorry, I'd never heard about that. Yes, of course, I'll match what they do. Oh, they got a doubled at the office? Oh, I'll match that too. It can happen. But it doesn't happen if you don't get the message out there to people or you don't ask them. And feel, as Mike was saying, feel no shame when people say no. Mike, have you had people say no very often?
Not too often when you're playing football and you got all these big men with you. No, it does not. The no's didn't come too often. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
Well,
it can be done.
Mike and John, you both shared so much. Thank you so much for just this not small, this huge contribution you've given today. I really do appreciate it. I want to share a list of resources that are also available to people to help them in their walk as they're fundraising. First, of course, is the Walk to Defeat Duchenne website. When you click onto the website, you'll see a tab with different resources. Please click into that tab and you'll see some great resources. Mike said Laura, his wife, is wonderful when it comes to social media. On that page, you'll see posters, you'll see photos, all different things you can use to elevate your Walk to Defeat Duchenne and your fundraising work. I don't expect anybody to remember this URL. So another way you can access it is also by visiting our website. If you get onto the Defeat Duchenne website, you'll also see a banner. Click into that, and it'll take you right to the Walk to Defeat Duchenne website. Another resource I want to share with you is myself. So I work for Defeat Duchenne Canada. I'm their Director of Development. I'm a certified fundraising executive, and I'm always pleased to echo the amazing things I've learned from inspiring people like John and Mike, the learnings I've had from school as well. So please also reach out to me. My email is there. I would love to hear from you. So Lisa, thank you for also being on this call with us. Can you share some kind words just for John and for Mike and for everybody else who's fundraising for Defeat Duchenne Canada?
Absolutely. Always inspiring. Mike and John, thank you so much. You said it, John. Fundraising is not easy. We're not all comfortable asking folks for money. But in all of my years working, as a fundraiser and in the charitable sector, one of the lines that I've heard many times over when you ask people, well, why didn't you give? And they often say, well, nobody asked me. I didn't know. So to John's point and what Mike said too, never be afraid to ask. People always have the option to say no, but often you don't receive if you don't ask. And there's lots of people out there who are willing to contribute if they just know and they just hear the story. And so please reach out to us, look for the resources that Jordan has shared, and John and Mike, your time today has been so impactful, and I have no doubt that it will inspire and help many, many more people as they set out on their fundraising journey. So thank you both so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you,
Thanks,
John.
Lisa.
Thank
you,
Mike.
Jordan. And Mike, special thanks. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I hope everything is great with you and your family in Regina. think of you all the time. I've watched on Facebook the family photos, and I feel like I've seen your kids grow up. A couple of whom I've never even met. Every time I ran into Laura, she was as big as a house almost.
Yeah, she's
You
pregnant
have
for
a
6 years.
wonderful, wonderful family, and I'm just so proud to know you folks. And I thank you for all you've done for us. And what Mike's a very modest guy. I think he'd call himself a regular dad. So you have a living proof of what a regular dad and family can do when they put their mind to it. So
Well, I
thanks.
call myself a super dad to my kids, but they just roll their eyes. So I guess
Yeah.
I'm a regular dad.
I know the feeling.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody. And John, always thank you, sir. You know, you inspired us and gave us hope when probably our worst time in our lives. So, you know, forever grateful to you and your family as well.
My pleasure, Mike. Glad I was able to help.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate the time.
Appreciate you. Thank you, everybody.